Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be talking about February in the main, at least that's up to about the time that Pisces comes in, 19th of February, something like that. But it's broader than that because this February is very special. We've got a lot of very, very powerful Uranus influences, and that kind of makes for both an exciting period of time, but also a little bit volatile. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Aquarius as well, because we are in the time of Aquarius, and one of Aquarius's rulers is Uranus, and we'll get into that in a minute. And of course, then I'm going to be looking at the astrology of the piece. I'm going to be looking at the new moon in Aquarius, which is so significant this year, being exactly square Uranus. But before I get into all that, I just wanted to say a couple of things. One of them is, if you really love these videos, please subscribe. There's a little button at the bottom of the screen here. And also, likes are always nice. And if you have any really strong opinions, then please pop them in the comments section. And it helps, well, it helps the channel to really thrive and grow, which is what we want to do with astrology. Yes? So anyway, let's begin. Let's begin with the time of Aquarius. And Aquarius is often thought to be a water sign. And the reason for that is very simple, because we think about the water bearer, that we see the head of this man, and on his shoulders we can see this urn, which is pouring something out. Well, it isn't actually water, hence although it is the water bearer, what is coming out of the urn is ether. That's the stuff of the gods. And really and truly, Aquarius, being an air sign, is about concepts. It's about thoughts and ideas that are light years ahead. It plugs you into the cosmos. It takes you beyond what you can see. It's very scientific at the same time. We think about Aquarius and the brotherhood of man, the idea of humanity. And Aquarius, of course, is really and truly about brotherhood. It's about the collective as opposed to the personal, one-on-one. And that's beautifully portrayed in astrology by Leo being the opposite sign. And Leo is all about the self. It's all about the me in situations, whereas with Aquarius, it's all about the we in situations. It's about the collective humanity as a whole. And you can see that these ideas are very airy. They're not really watery. Whenever we think about water and the element of water, we're always into feelings, deep feelings, the world of feelings, which is fairly irrational. But in fact, Aquarius is ultra rational and isn't disturbed by feelings, takes an objective, airy kind of view about things. In fact, people also make a little bit of a kind of misunderstanding about Aquarius, in that the sign itself is objective. It is about concepts, as indeed is air. But with that sometimes comes the idea that Aquarius is detached. It's detached from its feelings, which is not the case at all. Aquarius has very deep feelings, but often keeps them to herself or himself or themselves, in order not to kind of distort the truth, as it were. So there's a lot to Aquarius that I think a lot of people don't understand. And also it's this idea of the complexity of Aquarius, is that it is ruled by two rulers. It has its old ruler, which is Saturn. It had to, right up until 1781, share a ruler with Capricorn. So Saturn rules Capricorn, and Saturn, old ruler, is also Aquarius. But with the discovery of Uranus, Aquarius claimed its own very individual ruler, this quirky planet that doesn't follow its orbit. It's tilted at a very strange angle to the ecliptic, the path that the planets travel on. So right from the start, we're looking at things that are very, very different when we get into the world of Uranus. And this is how Aquarians are such a complex sign, because they are both Saturnian in a way that Saturn likes control, likes order, likes things to make sense. And it can be quite rigid sometimes about, doing things that don't follow some kind of organized route. Whereas Uranus is all about, well, let's explore, let's change it up, let's not do what's always been done before, and let's be a little bit different. It's the bohemian side of Aquarius. Now, if we look at the symbol for Aquarius, we see those two little wavy lines. And again, this seems initially to enforce the idea that Aquarius has something to do with water, but it doesn't. Those waves really are sine waves. And if you're not sure what that means, when you think about electricity, for instance, and we think about the power companies generating that power, it's all about sine waves. That's how we understand it. And I often say, when I'm writing about Aquarius, that it's a sign that is light years ahead. And it seems to fit when we understand what those little wavy lines are. They're sine waves. They're to do with unseen power, if you like, connected to things that are light years ahead. And I think also, perhaps what I want to say here as well, is that when we think about the signs, when we think about being an Aries, a Sun Aries, or a Sun Leo, or a Sun Aquarius, when you think about it, that's a 1/12 of the population. We're dividing the population into 12 groups. And you think, well, how can every Aquarian have the same experience on the same day? Well, it isn't really like that. Being an Aquarian, having the sun in Aquarius, like having the sun in Virgo or wherever it may be, it's like belonging to a nation. We have the qualities that people associate with Americans, Australians, the Brits, the Swedes, whatever it may be. We have a kind of brand identity, but of course, we're all very, very different. And we can explain that difference in two ways when it comes to astrology, that we can look at a natal chart, which is a combination of the rising sign, the midheaven, Mercury, Venus, all the other planets set around the circle of the zodiac. And that's where we get the difference. But even more important than that, because really and truly we can be looking at the ingredients of a horoscope as the tools with which we carve out our lives, by which destiny is working in our lives. But it's also the consciousness that we bring to that chart, and our genetic background, our ancestral past. This all plays into how one Aquarian is very, very different from another Aquarian. Now, let's have a little closer look at Uranus as well. And this is the symbol for Uranus. And all the planetary symbols are made up of about 3 or 4 ingredients. And what you can see when you're looking at this symbol is in the center of things, we've got the cross of matter. And on the two sides, making it look like a television aerial, we've got the semicircle of soul, and right at the very bottom, the full circle is the circle of spirit. So we have this image within the planetary glyph of what Uranus is all about. And we certainly know from experience, when we think about the time it was discovered, when there were so many revolutions going on, Industrial Revolution, French Revolution, American Revolution, you name it, all sorts of things were being overturning in the process of growth, in progress, in fact. So you can see, I think, a little bit where we get this Uranian side of Aquarius, and where, of course, we astrologers really start to look at what Uranus means, and when we're looking at the angles they're forming on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis, we can make our interpretations. So when we astrologers look at Uranus and we want to make some predictions or forecasts, whether it's for an individual with your natal chart, or whether we're looking at trends in the world, or we're looking at different countries. And of course, when we look at a different country, we take the capital of that country and set it from there. We have a look at the basic nature of the country as expressed by all the planets in that circle. And then we look at where the planets are today, or where they have progressed to by symbolic progression. And we can start to see why things are happening the way they are, and perhaps how they are likely to unfold in the future. So when we're looking at Uranus, we are playing with words to do with controversy or controversy, whichever you prefer. We're looking at rebellion, we're looking at revolution, and we're looking at awakenings and breakthroughs. There's always positive and negative attributes to all the planets, and in fact, all the angles and everything in astrology is about polarities and tiers of meaning. So we don't just look at Uranus and think, oh, goodness, this is the equivalent of the tower in the tarot pack. So it's all terrible. It's all flashes of lightning and towers leaning and all of that. We think about what flashes of lightning can do, lightning inspiration, how we progress through that way of breaking down barriers. And I often use three words for Uranus when I'm writing about it. I think about breakthrough, break up, and break down. These are good words to play around with when you start looking at Uranus. And of course, it's in all our charts. It's not a personal thing. We don't express it personally. We don't relate to it personally. It's a trans-personal planet. But what we do is when we look at the dialogue between the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, ascendant, midheaven, then this ties it in personally, and we start to get a through road towards what something like Uranus means. So we have access to it without, in a way, finding it comfortable to kind of express or live with. However, one of the things that I've been looking at recently, and I've talked about it quite a lot on these videos, is the idea that, especially with the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are hard work to say the least, is that if we think about one of their primary purposes, their properties, their process, and we can see that there are some really wonderful things that come about through that kind of portal, then with Uranus, we are looking at the idea of breaking through, of being able to transcend, in a way, the limitations of routine, the limitations of strict thought. And it's something that we can access by our personal planets in our horoscope. So just want to make sure I haven't. Oh, yes, one other thing I've forgotten to say about Uranus is that it is the planet of astrology. And when you think about astrology, which is about dealing with the science of the planets, we know they are a reality. We understand from the science what's going on. But of course, it takes another leap of faith, very Aquarius, very Uranus, to start saying it actually has relevance to our lives. We're actually connecting with you know, the solar system, Uranus in particular, and that we can deduce or gain some kind of meaning from all of this. And I think, too, one of the things that I really enjoy about Uranus, this idea of epiphanies and awakenings. And we need those all the time, because if we weren't aware of something, we don't know it's there, we're going to go on making mistakes. So we need to embrace Uranus for the idea that we can break through our own boundaries, our own limitations. And that's also rather nice when you think about the connection between Uranus and Saturn, being Saturn ruling Aquarius, old ruler, Uranus being the new ruler. The relationship between the two, the idea of breaking boundaries, is actually a perfectly neat little expression of that. So there are some important dates in February, and the first one that I'm thinking about really is the Chinese New Year begins on the 9th, 10th of February. Rather depends where you are in the world. And although, you know, I'm not an exponent of Chinese astrology, but what I do know is that the Chinese New Year, the beginning of the new year of whatever it is, in this case, it's the year of the dragon, the year of the wood dragon, is that it's decided astronomically by being the second new moon after the winter solstice. And the winter solstice is 20th, 21st of December. So you get one new moon after that, but it's the second one that actually begins the Chinese New Year. That's when the new year comes in. And of course, that's the sign of the dragon is going to take us through the whole of the year. And I just did pick up one little tidbit of information about that. So I was just checking that I could tell you something about this without getting bogged down in the true complexity of Chinese astrology. And that is that Vladimir Putin is a dragon. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Obviously, dragons, kind of powerful people. Let's leave it at that. So the second thing about February that's coming into this video is the Valentine's Day. Now, not everybody is a romantic. Not everybody cares in the least about Valentine's Day. And I kind of support that in some ways, because why isn't every day about love? Why isn't it every day that we make sure that we are showing our partner love, or someone we love? We should be doing that anyway. We don't need to be told to do it on Valentine's Day. But that would be disingenuous of me not to say, well, look, Valentine's Day is the big day in the romantic calendar, and lots of people get engaged, they get married, and a lot of people look to that date to see whether the person they're dating really has any kind of intention towards them being serious. So it's a really big day in the romantic calendar, but also astrologically this year is a pretty big day, as you'll see when we start to look at the chart that I'm going to be working with. On that day, Mars and Pluto are in conjunction. And when we think about the positive sides of a Mars-Pluto conjunction, we're certainly working with passion and sexual passion, perhaps, on one side of it. We're looking at also the idea that things that have been hidden, that are dark and secret, now get exposed, blasted apart. But the less kind of a rewarding or fun, if we want to use that word, kind of dimension to a Mars-Pluto aspect, and on this occasion, a Mars-Pluto conjunction, is that it's very destructive. And the things that are revealed tend to be things that knock us back a bit. And you can imagine when we've got a lot of Pluto in the astrology, which of course we did have, in the middle of January towards late January, we had an awful lot of things taking place when I think really in the world, whether it was things that were politically devastating, whether we think there were things that came out from the dark, when we think about the post office scandal in Britain, 20 years people have not been treated, they've a huge miscarriage of judgment. So that has come right into the limelight. All sorts of things have gone on from that. And we can see that's Pluto working. But also, I think we got a lot more stress going on in that very hot Middle Eastern area with the Houthis and the Red Sea and the traffic, the merchant traffic trying to get through there, which is also very plutonic, very confrontational, very conflict-ridden. So when we come to think about Valentine's Day and we think, hey, yeah, this is passion on sticks, and something is going to be discovered, and everything will change because of that in a very beautiful and positive way. Yes, we have got that, but we've also got the other side of that, which can be destructive. And it's always good to be aware of that. And when you know an aspect like that is around, if something makes you angry or you're feeling a little bit paranoid about something, then that's the time to say to yourself, I should be careful here. It's a Mars-Pluto conjunction. I think what I need to do is detach, step back, wait until it's passed. 1,000 to 1, you're going to be feeling much more intense about things and much more likely to self-destruct, which is a real property of Pluto. And also, well, Pluto rules Scorpio, and we know that Scorpios can, wonderful as this sign is, can occasionally self-sabotage. Okay, so let me take a little pause there and get my chart up so that we can have a look at where everything is. So here you can see a chart for the new moon. The new moon, the Chinese New Year, welcome in, but also just for us Western astrologers, a new moon, always a sign of new beginnings and new chapters. And in this case, it'll be very interesting. This particular chapter that's opening will have a completion date of the 19th of August this year. And you may want to pop that in your notebooks or on your phones, however you keep relevant information, because that period around the 19th of August this year is going to be amazing. And it can be amazing, fabulous, or it can be amazing, very difficult. But I do like that word controversy or controversy, however you want to say that, because that's what we're going to be seeing around that time. Some very big life-changing developments, and they may be being set in motion on this new moon, which occurs on the 9th or the 10th of February, depending where you are in the world. The chart that I'm using here, as you can see, is set for Washington in America. That's the capital of America. And so hence we look at what this new moon means for America. And we can see that on this occasion, it is the 9th of February. And actually, this gives me a little bit of an opportunity to mention something about America and politics. And I know sometimes in my emails and on my comments, I get people sort of saying, you know nothing about American politics, why you're talking about America, blah, blah, blah. And the fact is, I lived in America for 20 years. My husband was an American. And of course, we were deeply engaged in politics. And I have this whole life in America, so I do understand America, do understand the politics. And the other thing I would say that's very important in reference to someone like myself, a Brit, making some comments about another country and its influences, is that, something, it's like what we say about us as individuals, that we don't see ourselves as others see us. And it's the same really with a country and its politics, sometimes viewed from the perspective of another country and a distant place. We see more of the developing picture. We're not so ground down by the minutiae of what's going on in a country. We can distance ourselves from it and take the bits that we think are really relevant. So those things are important, and I don't mean to tread on anyone's toes when I talk about a country or a nation, but particularly with America, I feel, America is my heart. That's where I lived for 20 years, So, that's something that I had meant to say a couple of times on these videos. So let's look more closely at this. We can see that the new moon there on the sort of 3 o'clock point in our astrological clock at 20 degrees, 41, 42 minutes of Aquarius. And we can see straight off the bat, and I've drawn little red lines to it so we can't miss it, is that it is exactly square, well, let's say maybe less than a degree from planet Uranus. And not only do we have Aquarius ruled by Uranus, the Uranian sign, squaring Uranus, its ruler. So we certainly know that around the time of the new moon, there are going to be a lot of things kicking off, all sorts of things happening that make us say, what was that? How, when, where? And the other point I want to make about this chart is that it's got the angles that, well, not precisely, but within a degree or so of Donald Trump. So we know that Uranus is heading towards Mr. Trump's midheaven. And at the time that I'm recording this video, and we're talking about the 29th of January, so that there's going to be some really quite controversial stuff going on, and that's shown in the new moon concerning America as a whole. So we know Mr. Trump is in the center of all of that because his angles fit those angles. But just in general, we're looking at breakthroughs, breakdowns, and breakups. So let's just have a little play around with those particular words. Now, the other thing that I want you to look at in this chart is that you'll see all the planets are grouped together in roughly a third of the circle. And that is a classic bundle shape. Yes, we can see a little omega sign out there in Libra. We can see a circle with a cross in it over by the ascendant. That's the part of fortune. But you don't consider those things when you're looking at a chart and its shape. You don't include the nodes and you don't include the part of fortune. So strictly concerning the planets in that little bundle shape mean that those babies born at this time will tend to have, or they will have this bundle shape, and they will be specialists. They will be people that are very kind of focused on things, obsessive almost, but specialists. They like to take something and really analyze it and really work with it. You know, that's the kind of character or the shaping that it leads to. But of course, there are all these other factors in a horoscope that give it shape and texture of a different variety. So I want us to look at how this map will, or how the portents in this particular map will come about. First of all, we talk about the new moon and we think new moon, new starts, new chapters, new beginnings. And I'm going to take you through that sign by sign shortly. For the moment, we're just looking at that new moon, new chapter. Then we look at its angle to Uranus, its closest aspect, and we know straight off the bat that means a new chapter coming in a kind of shocking, sudden, surprising way. This is a period of shocks and surprises, awakenings and also upsets. That's what we're looking at. That's what that new chapter is all about. And that's why I call this video the Uranus effect, because it's going to affect all of us. You know, simply by looking at this little map here, we can see it's going to have a huge effect on us. Running back a bit, you'll see Mars there at 27-28 of Capricorn, quite close to Venus at 21 Capricorn 42. So we could see those two planets are heading towards Pluto in Aquarius. So during the course of this time that this video will be relevant, we're going to be looking at a Venus-Pluto conjunction and a Mars-Pluto conjunction. And they're going to dominate this time because although the Mars-Pluto conjunction is on the 14th of February, the Venus-Pluto conjunction on the 17th of February, 8 days before that time, we're going to start to feel the effects of the Mars-Pluto, Venus-Pluto effect. 8 days before and 8 days after. So this is not just a Uranian period, it's also a Plutonic period. And where is Pluto? It's in Aquarius. We are in the age of Aquarius, the age of artificial intelligence, of the rise and rise of technology. And that's why the Pluto effect in Aquarius is all about how will this change the world. And so we might get intimations of all of this as Venus and Mars pass over Pluto. And certainly we know this year that we're going to be returning to the moon. We've already had some moon landings and some moon shots, a couple of which haven't really worked. But anyway, that's for another video. But that's what we're looking at as we start the months out. The exact Sun-Uranus square is on the 8th, but the new moon is what we're really talking about. So again, right from the start of the month, we've got Uranus entering our environment, and we must be prepared to do things differently. Same old won't be any good in this Uranian climate. We have to think outside the box. We have to find new solutions to old problems. And do we ever need some new solutions out there when we think of every nation in the world is struggling with the same things? Every nation is struggling with a cost of living crisis, all sorts of things that are bound into that through the war in Ukraine, and now the war in the Middle East and the problems in the Red Sea. So we need politicians who can come up with brand new solutions. I have to say that what I suspect is a lot of hirings and firings. I'm going to be seeing a lot of people leaving the political stage, and a lot of people making it into the front of the drama. And that's because that's what Uranus does. It changes it up a bit. Mercury is also a key factor in this, Mercury in Aquarius. And as we can see in this particular chart here, with Mercury at 7 of Aquarius, if we look up where we see our Uranus symbol, Jupiter is at 8 of Taurus, which means Mercury is squaring Jupiter. Again, this is something that's starting from the beginning of the month and will be with us pretty well through until Valentine's Day. And Mercury and Uranus are good news. Mercury and Jupiter are good news. Jupiter is this very big-hearted, fortunate, grand kind of planet. Yes, it can go over the top and we can get into all sorts of things spiraling out of control. But Jupiter is also things for the good of. And so we can see there are going to be some good discussions and good dialogues, and out of discussions, debates, and even crises, there are going to be some good things coming out of them. And I particularly like that. There's a nice Jupiter effect going on here. Now, you might also notice that Jupiter and Uranus are quite, well, they're not too far away. They will, in fact, be getting closer and closer to each other, and they will be exact on April the 21st of this year. But we're not there yet, and I want to leave that until a time when I can really get into what this Jupiter-Uranus is all about, what the conjunction is all about, what it means generally, and also, of course, to each of you looking at it sign by sign. Finally, the last aspect that I've got listed, aside from the Mars-Pluto conjunction of the 14th, is the Venus-Pluto conjunction of the 17th. We open the month on a Mercury-Pluto conjunction, and we end this section of the month that I'm talking about on a Venus-Pluto conjunction. So things are very profound. And I just want to make a little mention here, if you want to come back to me now, is that the royal family, that degree of the new moon 2021 of Aquarius, a fixed sign, that picks up on key members of the royal family, the British royal family's charts. So I think this period of February is going to be particularly important for announcements and changes, upsets, surprise things going on in this February period. So keep your eyes peeled for that, just to see how that Uranus effect will work in the lives of the royal family. And of course, we must also include Harry and Meghan, even though they are out of the royal family, so to speak, out in sunny California. They're still part of the family, and maybe some of those shocks and surprises are also going to be evident through them as well. So before I get into looking at everything sign by sign, I want to say again, and I do say this every time, but that's because new people join our channel all the time. And it can be confusing because I tend to look at things from the perspective of the sun sign. So if you're an Aries, you know, your first house is going to be Aries from a solar chart perspective. But if you've got Aries rising, whatever I may be talking about is taking place in a whole other area of your natal chart. So first thing you need to do is consider what sun sign you belong to. You know, are you a Leo? Are you a Cancer? Are you a Pisces? Because you will get a lot of information from my sign by sign discussion over this period of time. But if you know your rising sign, more important, you know the degree of your rising sign, you'll know exactly where the new moon is taking place and where Pluto and Uranus et al., where they're all situated. And you can take it, from that perspective too. The reason I quite like the sun sign is that when I get into the astrology of something, I kind of put myself in the skin of that particular sign. So it's about what makes Leo tick. It's about how does Pisces look at this? Where is it coming from? Its ruling planet. So a lot of that goes into my interpretation, which is why a sun sign interpretation is valid here. But again, yes, if you know your ascendant, you know your degree, you'll know exactly where all these things I'm talking about are. So let's begin sign by sign. And I just realized before I start going through sign by sign, there was something I didn't talk about when we were looking at the chart of the new moon. We could quickly look at it again, because I want to point out a very interesting piece of information in that chart. And that is the position of Chiron. That's the circle with a little K on it, up there in the sort of 1, 2 o'clock position. The nodal axis is very close to Chiron. And of course, the nodal axis is where eclipses take place. So we've got a very fateful theme going on with Chiron being close to the nodal axis. Now, Chiron is very interesting. It's not a planet. It's what's known as a centaur object. It kind of comes into our solar system via Saturn and comes out via Uranus. So we think of it as something that has the nature of Saturn and Uranus about it. And that's really interesting, considering what I'm talking about on this video, which is Aquarius and its two rulers, Saturn and Uranus. And now we have the North Node close to Chiron. So we're getting a kind of Saturn-Uranus essence from this. And if we go back to 2021, 22, 23, when Saturn and Uranus were 90 degrees away from each other, a lot of the things that were happening, lockdown, getting out of lockdown, we saw all sorts of things going on at that time that had a lot to do with restrictions and yet the desire for freedom. Let's take the war in Ukraine, which happened on a Saturn-Uranus watch. We have this whole idea of a country wanting its freedom, wanting to be its sovereign country. It's, and here was another country believing it belonged into the Russian Soviet fold. And that, in a sense, is also a demonstration of the Saturn-Uranus effect. So we need to think about that when we think about Chiron in astrology, but also when we look at the mythology of the piece, and we know that Chiron was a healer and a teacher. He lived outside the city. He lived in a cave, but then all the great heroes of Greek mythology came to consult him, to be healed and to be educated. So this figure is a very powerful one. And we've come to associate Chiron in astrology with a journey in healing. It doesn't have the effect of a planet, like, for instance, Mars is anger, it's energy, it's drive, it's sex, it's ambition, it's all those things. Whereas Chiron isn't like that. It isn't a something. Well, it's a journey. It's a journey in healing. So I think it's very interesting that Chiron, being so close to the nodal axis here, is sort of showing us something about the existential part of a situation, or even of ourselves, if you like. It's the part we can't fix. We keep trying to fix it, and we simply can't fix it. And I'd like to see how that plays out when we think about the astrology and the events in the world during this all-important February period. Is something we can't fix, except we keep trying. So no more ado, let's get on with sign by sign. And of course, I'm going to start with Aquarius, because this is the sign of the month, and this is where we want to begin. And as you see, Aquarius, when I put this up, and if you have Aquarius rising This is how things will look for you in the chart. Even if you're a Libra or a Sagittarian, that's how it will look. The new moon will be taking effect in your first house. So the first house of the horoscope, something happening in your own sun sign, is about you. It's very, very personal. And it's often about how we relate to the world, so that we come out to meet the world, if you like. But the first thing anyone sees is how we look. So it's our appearance, it's our manner, it's how we, how we appear to others. So the new moon says there's a change here. There's a new beginning. You're getting a new look. And when we see that square to Uranus, we could say straight away, you may wake up one day and decide, I'm going to cut my hair, or you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a radical change. But it's more than that. It's more about wanting people to see our differences and wanting to see us for our unique selves. So Aquarius or Aquarius rising, this part of February is about your impact on other people, and in a funny kind of way, what relationships that inspires as well. So there's something new coming in, and it is a great time to renew yourself and your appearance and everything about who you are and how the world looks at you, the image that you present. Now, as you can see, the square to Uranus is in the 4th house of your solar chart. So that has something to do with home and family and the roots of life. So it could be that there's some dynamic going on within the family. There are lots of changes on the home front itself, and perhaps some conflict with family members. How does that play into, your personal life? And given that the new moon is about new beginnings, it's time to sort of set something on one side and say, we've argued about this forever. We've thought about this forever. This has been going on forever. And you know what? Let's stop it. Let's stop it. Let's restart. Let's do something different. And of course, there could be things that happen. I mean, when we move home, for instance, and we move to a new place, we sort of gain a new identity, don't we? We see ourselves in a new place, and there's a new outlook that we have. So for some Aquarians, this is about moving. You're going to be moving to a different street or a different town or even a different state or a different country. So all of that is contained within what we're looking at here in the chart. So it's a new beginning, Aquarius, and one that you must not be afraid to take. Be your unique self. This is what this map is saying. Don't feel that you have to please other people, that you can only be accepted because you're doing what everyone else does, or you're doing what people expect of you. This is now time to throw all that away and be yourself. When we are ourselves, and we are ourselves without fear, we are more confident, we are more successful. And that really is the big message being driven home by this new moon and its angle to Uranus. So we come now and we look at Pisces. Well, for you Pisces, this new moon is taking place in the 12th house. And the 12th house is a house of secrets and shadows, as I call it. It's the power, one of the powerhouses of astrology, of the horoscope, because it is about the power of the mind. And I'm going to be talking about that at the end of this video. But the unconscious mind, this is where we soak up information that isn't conscious. It's like the peripheral vision. What's happening on the periphery of our vision, which our focus is dead center. That's what we see, but there's something going on at the sides. That's how the unconscious mind works. It sees, it knows, it feels, it senses. And how does it tell us what's going on? Well, it tells us through dreams, through intuitions, through flashes of information. And that's how we make giant leaps. So this setup with the new moon squaring Uranus, especially as Uranus is in the 3rd house of the mindset, of communication, of travel, of, well, the outlook we have. This says long and loud that new insights coming to you, powerful dreams, these are going to be the agents of change for you. And all sorts of things will change because you're looking at them from a new perspective. We can also think about the 12th house being this a very spiritual area of the horoscope. It's time to renew your spiritual self, if you like. And this might be because you start to do things geared to elevating your spiritual work, or it may be that you want to get more involved with yoga and meditation, all these things that tend to enhance our well-being and life in general. Very good thing to do on this new moon. But this area isn't just about spiritual health, health of mind, but it's body and spirit. So this is a great time to have a health MOT, by which I mean, you know, going for your dental checkups, looking at things that you're worried about in your physical self and getting it cleared up. What you don't want to do with this particular setup, with the sun moving through the 12th house of your solar chart, is ignore things and say, oh, you know, it'll clear up. Well, it probably won't clear up. So attention to your health, attention to the things that aren't working, attention to your dreams, giving the things like Pilates, yoga, meditation, incorporating them into your regime. These will all help you to live this more vertical life. So it's not just about the physical, it's not just about the mental, it's about the spiritual as well. And great ideas coming to you, great understandings, and maybe also great changes in your outlook, however that will manifest. So let's look now at Aries. Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, but in terms of what I'm going through, the third sign that I'm going to look at. So this new moon for you is in the 11th house, and the 11th house is about the group. Remember, in the first part of this video, I talked about Aquarius and the collective, about the we as opposed to the me, which is in the 5th house of the solar chart. So for you, this is a time to incorporate the group, to think more about teamwork. And Aries, you are a bit of a lone ranger. You know, you're very self-capable. You do things on your own. You like to be in charge. You have confidence about yourself, and you feel comfortable doing things for yourself and by yourself. But it's all about the group now. It's about enlisting other people and working with them, not working against them, but working with them. So there's a lot to learn about group consciousness, about the collective, and it's going to be something that will help you, that is going to really add to your quality of life, and certainly add to your quality of work, I think, too, because when we think about teamwork, I mean, lots of companies, of course, require you to work in a team, but there are lots of us who work not in a team, but this is a time to get that team spirit and to share things that are to do with the team. Now, that new moon is squaring Uranus. And where is Uranus? It's in the 2nd house. And the 2nd house is about self-worth. Self-worth in the way of how we feel about ourselves and what we have to offer the world, and the people we love or the people we work for, whatever it is, our value as a person. But it's also about money. It's about the assets that we have, the possessions that we have. So we're looking here at some new development. Does it mean a new source of income for you? Yes, it could. Or does it mean there's a change in your income? So a job goes, or that's something that you've invested in, or something that goes towards your living in terms of the material world, that's changing. Whether it changes for the better or changes in a less positive way, that's going to vary from person to person. But I think it's also a good time to think about how you can do things differently with money, how you can think about group stuff, things to do with more people, investments in a common cause, working, with groups, all of that is coming in to the idea of what this February period is all about, as portrayed by the new moon squaring Uranus. If we come to Taurus now, we can see the new moon right up there at the very top of your solar chart, same for Taurus rising. And here we have that angle to Uranus, which of course is in your very own sign. So whenever we've got anything in the 10th house, we're thinking about the world. We're thinking about what you do out in the world. So that can translate as a job, as your career, if you have a job and a career. And it's also to do with your status. So things in the social world are also depicted by the 10th house. And when we think about our status in other ways, whether we're married or whether we're single, whether we're a mother, whether we're a father, there are all sorts of things that our status in life reflects or is reflected in the 10th house. So a new moon means something new. So there could be a change of role for some of you Taurians. You could be doing something new in regard to work, or you could be having some new identity, if you like, that identifies you to your bigger world. And in square to Uranus in your own sign, whatever happens to change your role, or whatever happens to affect your career or your material world, we can look at it that way too, is unexpected. It sort of comes out of the blue. This is not something you thought about. But hey, Uranus is in your sign right now. And what it's saying, or what its reason for being there, is to help you to really be who you are meant to be, and to be your true self. That's what Uranus is trying to awaken you to. So that any of the things that go on in February that center on this idea of unexpected change, it's all about you. It's all about who you intrinsically are, who you want to be, but in a way that's true to who you are. Sometimes we can want to be something and it's not true to us. It's not really us. But it's when we align that quality, that idea of what we want to be, and it is a true reflection of who we are, then, we are online with our destiny, and life is easier because we are who we are meant to be. But yes, career changes. There could even be changes on the family front or with a relationship. And all of these affect your status to a certain degree, but it's in varying shades, isn't it? I mean, this is a general pattern. We're looking at generally for all Taurians, and they're going to be light and shade, and that's all reflected by the things I talked about at the start of this video: your consciousness, your age, your natal chart. Those are all going to make for subtle differences. But if you want to get behind this new moon, then it's making changes in your material world, making changes in the role that you have in life, because change is awakening, it's revivifying, it makes us be alive. And this is about being alive. So if we come now to Gemini, we see that the new moon is taking place in the 9th house, the 9th house of far horizons. And I love that very simple statement for the 9th house, because yes, the 9th house can be travel, international travel. It can be about other countries. It can be about things that are far removed from our everyday experience. It can be about learning, academia. It can be about consciousness even. It's something that is or removes us from the everyday world, takes us out of our world beyond to something else, something bigger, wider, more rarefied. So if we just look at that new moon in Aquarius, it says, hey, guess what? I'm going away. I'm taking a trip to a different country, a different place. And even if you're looking at me right now and saying, oh, I have no plans. Maybe you will have plans, even if you don't go away in the months of February. You may start to think about when you might go, or there might be reasons that come up that mean you have to take a trip. Because let's not forget, Uranus is bound up with that new moon, and that's saying, yeah, a surprise is on its way, something unexpected, and it could very well be associated with travel or people who live in distant places. So that's how we connect these two astrological principles, if you like. But I like to think too about a new moon in this area as being an opportunity to learn something. Your experience is going to bring to you a whole new way of looking at a certain situation, or just a new way of looking at things in general. Uranus is about, hey, how do I see this world? You know, how do I see the rest of my world out there? And Uranus says you need to look at things differently. And very often I use another analogy, which is like you start at the foothills of a mountain or a big hill, say. And so you can see everything around you. You can see the street, you can see the houses, you can see the trees. But as you go up the hill, as you go up the mountain, you get to the top, everything looks very different. You see it in a much, much bigger context. And I think what this new moon is doing is urging you to look at certain situations in your life in a bigger context, because that will bring the answers. But yes, just to repeat myself, there could be an unexpected, very surprise reason why you will need to take a trip. But then think of all the other layers of meaning to this, which is, you know, as I've said, all about widening your view and looking at things differently, and allowing for change to come in and refresh your mindset. That's really what that new moon in Aquarius squaring Uranus is all about. So here we come, Cancer. We look for you at where this new moon is, and it's taking place in the 8th house. Now, I find a lot of people don't really understand the 8th house at all. They look at the description of the 8th house and it's death and rebirth, and you think, oh, that's a bit scary. You know, why should I be concerned with death? Does a new moon in this area mean, you know, something associated with death? Well, death and rebirth is really a way of regeneration, a way of transformation. And so the new moon is helping you, you know, it's changing something in your life, in you, so that you get a rebirth from it. And it can be anything. We could look at this area really in terms of money. So we, particularly in regard to other people's money. So it's your arrangements with banks and lending institutions and credit card companies. So we could just say new moon square Uranus in the 8th house. There's some new arrangements coming up with your banking or with your credit card company. So open and shut. But of course, layers of meaning. We receive in this house. It's the money we receive from other people. So we can also be looking at inheritances. We can be looking at settlements. So maybe some money is coming to you or something is coming to you. And guess what? Because it's squaring Uranus, you didn't expect it. You never expected that outcome. This has happened, and whether it enriches you or whether it does the reverse, as I say, it's going to vary from Cancerian to Cancerian, because there is no precise identical, picture. Not every Cancerian is going to come into money unexpectedly, and not every Cancerian is going to be faced with a financial loss unexpectedly. But those are the two extremes we're looking at, and we're looking at shades of. But this house, or this area of the chart, is very interesting too, because it isn't just about money. And I mentioned that word receiving. It's about receivership, this area. So we also think about when we are in an intimate relationship, we give and receive, but it is so important to be able to receive. and you can play around with that idea in whatever way you like, but the art of receiving is just as important as the art of giving. And if we don't feel we are worthy of receiving something, everything gets a little bit more difficult. And we can look at that in the whole world of intimacy and think about how open we have to be to others, to receive, to share, to become intimate. And maybe for just a few of you, there is a new sexual relationship on its way, and that promises to shatter all your expectations or your previous experiences. Is going to open you up in very surprising ways. So we can do a lot of things with this new moon and Uranus that aren't just about new chapters in a, just a bland sense. We are looking at them very much in regard to what that 8th house has to offer you and its connection to planet Uranus. Leo, well, of course, excuse me, Aquarius is your opposite sign. And on my previous videos, in fact, the last one I did, we looked at Pluto entering Aquarius, and I spent quite a lot of time talking to you about the effects of Pluto in your opposite sign in your relationship house, and all the manifestations that, on all the permutations that can be. So in a funny kind of way, when the sun moves through the 7th house, you are getting a bit of that Plutonic experience. And if you remember when we looked at the map of that new moon and we looked at every other thing in that horoscopic circle, we looked at Venus and Mars coming up to Pluto during this period of time. So it isn't just a new moon in your 7th house. We're also going to see Venus and Mars move towards Pluto in the 7th house. So that's bringing out all that Plutonic potential to transform a relationship or to transform your experiences and expectations of relationships. Pluto, of course, is particularly affecting those of you with birthdays around the 22nd, 23rd, even the 24th of July. But also if you have planets and points at 0 degrees, so Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio. So this new moon, in a funny kind of way, is bringing out or telling you a little bit more of the Pluto story. On the surface of it, it means the new moon is showing there is a new cycle starting for relationships. For some of you Leos, it's going to be a new relationship beginning in the space of the next couple of weeks. But you remember also I talked about August the 19th and how important the full moon in Aquarius is going to be at that point, Sun in Leo, moon in Aquarius. And so if something starts in this next couple of weeks, it's got its denouement, its finishing line in 6 months' time, which could be extremely important if you start a relationship at this time. But even if you're not going to start a new relationship, you have relationships, working relationships, you may have business partnerships, or you may be in a marriage or in a one-on-one relationship. And that means a new beginning here. And it means it's time to throw out what doesn't work and to implement what does, or to go towards that. But with Uranus involved here, there could be breakups, there could be breakthroughs, and there could be breakdowns. Remember those 3 B words. So it's good to think about that because there's a variety of meaning to any single kind of character in an astrological script, as it were. So, be open to change. Don't block change. This is a time when you're being introduced to sharing with others, to allowing others to lead the way. And if others are dictating terms, this perhaps isn't your job to oppose them so much as to go along with the new things they're introducing. Your time will come when the sun moves through Leo, July through August. You're in charge of things, okay? Right now, it's other people. And so we move on to Virgo. And Virgo, here we have the new moon taking place in the 6th house of your solar chart, or if you've got Virgo rising, the new moon is in your 6th house. And there's a variety of meanings to this area of the horoscope. Again, like the 8th house, like the 12th house, very misunderstood. We think about work here, we think about well-being and health, and then we think, well, that doesn't sound very interesting, does it? Well, yes, of course it's interesting. I look at this house and I see it as one of the seeking houses. This is where we find our purpose. We can find our purpose in the 9th house, and we can find it in the 12th house as well. But in the 6th house, it tends to be about other people. So it's about how what we do impacts other people. And it's all about finding something about our purpose, or finding our whole purpose in what we can do for others. And that's why this area of the chart has a lot to do with social work. It has a lot to do with health and the the healing side of life. It has to do with teaching, education. So a lot of things about this new moon in the 6th house suggest that all these areas of life have some relevance at this time to you. But what's it all about? It's all about your purpose and how that is tied up with what you do for other people. And there's a great deal of satisfaction to be found by helping people, by, because they are grateful for your input. And when we feel we've been of use to people, we do really feel as though we've had some boxes ticked and, we've been useful. But the 6th house is also about health, yes. So this is an opportunity to reboot your health, and it can be an opportunity to have a checkup to see if everything or all cylinders are sparking, or it can also be clearing up problems. So if you've got a toothache, or you've got some kind of injury or something like that, it needs to be fixed, and you should fix it when the sun is moving through this area. And certainly on a new moon, you get new answers to health issues, and that's a good thing. And maybe some new treatments, some out of the box kind of therapies or medication that's going to make a big difference to your overall health. And yes, Virgo, there could be changes in the workplace itself, whether you've got new people coming in, so you've got some new dialogues going there, or whether there are new things for you to do, new systems in place in regard to work. And maybe it will upset the apple cart, maybe you won't like it, but all change is ultimately good. And it's with change that we grow. And even if your system is upset, and let's look at what I said just then, system being how you do things, the systems you have, but we also think of our system, our health system. If it gets an upset, it's an opportunity to learn something new about it, and also to try new things that are going to be more effective. So lots of things to think about there for you too, Virgo. So here we are on Libra, and Libra, for you, you are an air sign, and Aquarius is another air sign. So technically, when the sun is moving through Aquarius, you should feel a sort of level of kind of comfort with things. I'm in my time, I'm another airy time, this is fine. The time of Aquarius, of course, means that the sun is moving through your 5th house, and this is an area of joy. We find our joy in the 5th house. It's about play. And when you think when we were children, how important play was. And sometimes I get a bit worried these days that children are always either watching the TV, or they're on their phones, or they're on their little computers. And so they're interacting, with technology, as opposed to interacting with other little people. And of course, it's in play that we learn so much about ourselves and about what we want to be, and how to deal with the world and other people, and how to bring the imagination into our everyday life, our everyday world. So when the sun moves through this area, that's what we have at our disposal. And so we should play. However, whatever you think of as play, it can be very sporty as well. So things to do with exercise. This part of the chart is ruled by Leo. It's the heart. So things that make our heart feel good, you know, is that cardiovascular regimes, doing things that help our cardiovascular system? Is it doing things that make our heart beat faster? Is it falling in love? Is it having a lot of rumpty-dumpty? You know, what is it? But that's play. That's our joy in the fifth house. It's also our children as well, if we have them, or if we want to have them. Maybe this new moon is all about getting pregnant. It's about becoming a grandparent. It's about one's progeny. And we have the element of surprise. Remember, that new moon is squaring Uranus. So is this a surprise addition to the family? Is this going to be a child, even a grown-up child, having something happen that is changing their lives? And of course, when we're parents, everything that happens to our children affects us as well. So we're looking at all these things. We're looking at new chapters. We're looking at new things going on, but they're things we didn't expect. And it is certainly a time, especially if you're in a creative field, if you're a writer or you're in advertising or whatever you are, let's change it up a bit. Let's do something we've never done before, and let's see where that takes us. Remember, Uranus is light years ahead. It takes us beyond, and how wonderful to come up with new ideas and therefore new creative efforts. Other thing, I think, with the fifth house, a little bit like the seventh house, if we begin a new romantic relationship under this kind of influence, Libra, then you may find that it's decided in 6 months' time where you go from here with it, whether it's done and dusted or whether it's the beginning of a new stage of that romance. But you are certainly open to romance with this new moon squaring Uranus. So even if you're listening to me and thinking, chance would be a fine thing, don't be surprised if suddenly eyes across a crowded room and there you are in a hot romance. So here we go with Scorpio. And Scorpio, this new moon is at the very base of your horoscope, and that's the start of everything. I often see the horoscope like a tree. So we see the roots of a tree in the fourth house, and we see the highest branches pointing upwards in the 10th house, but they're connected. And when you think about it, it's our upbringing and our childhood, our experiences, what we've been taught and educated by our parents to believe are valuable and what we should be doing. By the time we get into our stride and we are out in the world doing something, that's in part has a lot to do with how we were brought up. So that's how we look at houses in astrology. The opposite house plays into the other one. They have a relationship with each other. So we look at this new moon and we think about something new happening within the family. Is it that you're going to be moving home? Are you going to, you know, find a new place to live? Or is it that new people are coming into the family or coming into your home? Maybe you're renting a room out, or maybe you share a house with people and there are some new tenants. It could be anything like that. But when we look a little bit deeper at what it means, you know, changes at root level are sometimes uncomfortable, but they're necessary. And if you play around with what I've said and you think about it, I think you'll find that piece of advice really helpful for you or to you when you are thinking about the astrology and what this new moon means. You think about the changes that are uncomfortable happening to you at your core, at your root level. They affect the roots of life. Uncomfortable they may be, but you know, things need to shift and move because you need to grow. Now, if we look at Uranus in the 7th house, it's been there for about 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. So it's been a long period, really, of, well, both excitement in relationships, new ones, unexpected liaison, but it's also been a time where relationships have collapsed as well. So we've got this Uranus factor playing into the new moon. So it says, you know, new relationships that come into being now are born in unusual ways or with unusual people. They're against the type you usually are attracted to. They happen in places you didn't expect. And what the relationship is doing is sort of opening you up to new feelings and new possibilities. It's uprooting you in some way. But we could say the same thing about a long-standing relationship, that maybe that relationship is tired. Maybe it's done even. And we need Uranus to come along and say, you know what? Change is necessary. Whether you really bring a lot of change into your relationship, refresh it, give it a rebirth, or whether it's time, it's done, and you need a new independent path. And maybe that has ramifications because, of course, if you break up a relationship, whether it's a marriage or it's a live-in relationship, there have got to be changes on the home front. One person has to go, or you have to make huge accommodations. So it can be about a home, it can be things to do with mortgages as well, it can do with contracts that you have related to the home or things that are in the home. It could even be things to do with the electricity supply. So it centers on the home, it centers on the family as well. And we're tying in Uranus to this, Uranus in the 7th house, other people, relationships, but also Uranus in and of itself, which is revolutionary and electric. Then that's going to play into the story of the new moon for you. And so to my penultimate sign, and here we are, we're looking at Sagittarius. So for you, Sagittarius, or those of you with Sagittarius rising, the new moon is happening in the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is about one's outlook. And I quite like to make that nice and simple, because when we talk about outlook, we say, oh, he or she or they have a different outlook from me. And that sort of means you look at the world, your values, priorities in a different way. And when you get a new moon in the 3rd house, it's saying, hey, guess what? It's time for a new outlook. Now, does that mean that you're moving somewhere else so that out through the windows of where you live, you're seeing new things? Well, it could do. It could also mean that something that you're learning or something that happens in your experience changes your outlook. And the new moon is always new chapters. So maybe you're starting a new study course, maybe you're starting something new, and that's going to open up your world in very positive ways. But of course, as soon as you see things differently, as soon as you've got a different outlook about something, it changes the established things. So it could change a relationship because you've got a whole different view of that person or what that relationship means in your life. You are open to learning something and you think, guess what? I'm in the wrong job. I need to retrain. I need to get more qualifications. I really got to make these changes. So with a change of outlook come big changes. And it may be there is a sudden awakening. You suddenly realize what's going on. You suddenly realize what you want. But it can also be other people who make changes for you, so that the outlook that you had, that you might be quite comfortable with, is suddenly changed because someone else says, that's not the way it is. That's not the way it's going to be. It's change. And Uranus for you is in the 6th house, so maybe this is centered on work. Maybe there are changes with regard to your work or the workplace that really mean you're going to have to get a new job or a new outlook. But remember, there's so many different, when we think about Sagittarians, 1/12 of the population is Sagittarius. What makes the difference is your natal chart, your age, time of birth, but also your consciousness and your background and your genes. All this plays into how differently this new moon will work itself out, or how it will manifest in your life. And with its connection to Uranus, what we do know is that it's surprising and it's unexpected. It could also be to do with your health or your kind of daily existence, because that could throw things out as well. But as always, we're moving forward, aren't we? We're getting older. We've got life behind us, life ahead of us. Life as it was when we were 10, or when we were 19, or in cases like mine, when we were 50, it's all different. And getting that outlook and that change and the things that happen to us in our lives that say, you know what, I'm looking at this in the wrong way. I really, really need to look at this situation in a very different way. And I think that's a general note to all Sagittarians, or all of you with Sag rising. You need a new look on something. It'll make a big difference in a much bigger way. And yes, if you feel like taking up a new study course, or maybe you're learning to drive the car, or you're doing something that will add to your skill set, very, very good on this new moon to do that. And remember, Uranus is going to blow things open for you. It's going to open your eyes to something too. And so finally, here we are with Capricorn. So Capricorn, this new moon is taking place in the second house. And the second house is about values, just one word, values. But it's self-value. It's how you think of what your value is to other people. And of course, that can be in terms of love. You're in a relationship. Are people valuing you? It can be in terms of being employed. Are people valuing you, your work, and are they paying you enough? Because the second house is about our assets and what we consider to be our assets in terms of ourselves, but also our assets in terms of whether we have a home, a car, money in the bank, jewelry, what is it that we consider to be assets and possessions? So a new moon here is saying, hey, there's something new coming in. Could it even be a new property? Are you hunting around looking for a new home, or looking for a property to buy? Chances are a new moon will reveal that to you. So there's a new agreement concerning property. That is one meaning of this new moon. Is it a new source of income? Yes, it could be. But let's look at that square to Uranus. There are changes. Does it mean that your income changes because of some kind of random development or a decision? It could do. So while some Capricorns may find that their income changes in a very good and surprising way, it increases, or your options increase, for others it's the reverse, and a source of income is lost, or some kind of factor that amounts to the money that allows you to put a roof over your head and live. There are now new circumstances. So it's adaptation to the new that you need to do. And sometimes I find, and I have done in my work over a very long period of time, that it's only when we are forced to develop or create something new that we do it. I mean, half the time we talk about, oh, you know what I'd really like to do for a living is this. I really think I'm meant to be that. I should be doing this. But of course we don't, because we're on the treadmill, aren't we? We get a salary check every week or every month or whatever it is. And we're loath to give that up, because that's how we structure our lives and that's our security. But we still have these yearnings. Oh, I really want to be a writer. Oh, I really want to travel. I want to have a vineyard. Well, until something happens, you're probably not going to make that happen. But if you've got no alternative but to finally get on board with what you truly want to offer the world, then it's something like Uranus squaring a new moon that will do that to you. So it's about change, Capricorn. And I know you're not a great lover of change. It takes you a very, very long time to decide, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because it will affect my security if I'm not careful. But you know, you won't have much choice with this particular new moon setup. Things have to change. And my goodness, if you're not going to change them, then the universe will change them for you. Okay, so there we are. We are at the end of the 12 sign interpretation, which I hope you found interesting. And we have arrived at that all-important point, the conclusion. So, you know, when I do my little summing up, my little conclusion at the end of these videos, it's always inspired by something that's happened to me, or a session I've had with a client, or something that I've read or has happened in the world. It always inspires me to start thinking about something I think is important to share with you. And so this time, and it really does go with the idea of our new moon squaring Uranus, all the big Uranus aspects we have, and also the fact, you know, we're in the time of Aquarius, and Pluto has just gone into Aquarius. And a lot of people really are talking about this big shift for humanity. And yes, I've mentioned that a couple of times. And my response to that is always, well, yes, of course, Pluto moving into Aquarius, this sign, as I discussed earlier on, of humanity. It's about, you know, light years ahead. It's about artificial intelligence. It's about the brotherhood of mind. It's about so many things. And I like the idea that there is a big shift in consciousness taking place, and it will make life different for all of us. But then my rational side comes along and says, you know, it takes millions and millions of years for us to change, as we know from all the old kind of skeletons we find that go back thousands of years. We know it's taken a long time for us to be who we are today, and consciousness is part of that as well. But having said that, I do think that there is something that we can take on board with the idea of a change in consciousness, and that's the increasing understanding of the power of the mind. Now, another thing about Uranus and Pluto in Aquarius and the changes going on, there's a lot of talk about the idea that power comes back to the people, and I really get that. I get that idea. Pluto, Aquarius, it is about the people. I get it. But I think we've somehow got it a little skew-whiffed in the sense that it's not as though we, the people, have the power to change things in terms of where we live and our country and all of that, except we do. And how do we do that? We do that with a vote. In a democracy, the people have power because we vote for who we think can run our country better, who can make things better for us. So we're already in a democracy. We already have the power of the vote. But what I do think is interesting with this idea of Pluto and Aquarius and the change and the age of Aquarius coming in is the idea of the power of the mind. Now, people can prevent you from doing things. You can be in the control of a government. You can be in control of another person and long to be free of that control. But nobody, I'm going to say this and argue with myself again in a minute, nobody can control your mind. You are free to think what you want to think. And let's not forget that. And maybe that's one of the importances that we need to think about right now with everything going on in Aquarius and all that Uranus, Pluto in Aquarius. We need to think, no one can stop me thinking what I want to think. I have freedom of thought. Then we come to think about mind control, don't we? We think about all these ways that the mind can be controlled, whether that's with the information we're given, whether it's conspiracies, whether it's whatever it is we're exposed to, altering our thoughts. And then we think about the power of the mind to make things happen. And we look at, you know, telepathy, we look at telekinesis, where objects can move with the power of the mind, all of which we've had quite a lot of evidence for. And I go back to when I was very, very young and in the first stages of astrology. And my astrological mentor, who worked in the war during World War II with a group of very powerful people, and they used the power of the mind and the spirit to affect changes going on in the war. So it's always been there. And I think that this is Pluto and Aquarius as well. It's the power of the mind to make change that we're really looking at. And time again, I talk about changing your outlook, changing your perspective will change outcomes. And I think this is the really, really powerful thing about what we're looking at right now, is not just some energetic change that's sort of happening to us in some rarefied way, however you want to conceive that. It's the power of our individual consciousness, our individual thoughts that change our lives, that we live, and can change the world if it's taken to that extent. So that was really on my mind a lot this week, the idea of the power of the mind and the freedom we have to think what we want to think. Isn't that truly an Aquarian thing, a Uranian thing, a Pluto and Aquarius thing? Food for thought. So thank you for being with me. As I mentioned earlier, don't forget to subscribe or like, because it helps our channel to grow. And I look forward to seeing you again on my next video. Bye for now.